It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
The conference finals are amongst us as the Miami Heat took on the Indiana Pacers yesterday, and they fell in Game 1 of their series. Welcome into the Sports Blitz. I am your host, Weldon Braxton. Mark Freeman is out of the office today. You shouldn't be surprised because we told you this was going to happen on Friday, so you really shouldn't be shocked. But I am not in the studio alone. As always, our great producer, Matty Lassiter, who is challenged today. He had a difficult workout, and he's hobbling, but he's in here.
I'm here, but I'm not going to be 100%.
Yeah. He's playing injured. Dave Brown, our one-time heckler, but I fired him because he wasn't good at it. He was too nice. He just couldn't bring it home like a good heckler should. But nonetheless, we are happy to have him in the studio. And the phone is ringing. I don't know who that could be. It could be a surprise caller here on the Sports Blitz. But so much to get to today. Our producer Matt is telling us we do have somebody on the line. Let's see who it is. Welcome caller. Caller, you're on the line. Please identify yourself.
Oh, you already know who this is.
Well, this sounds like Mark Freeman. He took the time to actually call in and be a part of our humble little show. We are so happy to have you. Mark, what's going on?
Oh, just trying to find highlights of the Heat thrashing yesterday because I was here in Nashville getting baby pictures made, and apparently that was better for my health because looking at the stats, it doesn't look like I wanted to watch that game anyway.
Well, it's funny. You didn't get to watch it. I actually didn't get to watch it either. I was at my sister's graduation, so I was out of town, so I didn't get to see it either. But I feel like I got a feel for what kind of went on, Mark. Just give me your initial impressions, and then I'll give my thoughts.
Well, I got to watch the stats throughout the game, and I listened to the first half on the radio on the way in, and the Heat playing no defense and the Pacers hitting every shot they threw up. I was thinking of a headline, how do you beat the Heat and make every shot you take? And that seems like what the Pacers did in the first half. But the more I listened and the more I looked to the stats after the game and listened to some of the analysis, it sounded like the Heat just didn't seem like they cared on defense. And anytime you give up 100 and some points to a team who was, we were making fun of them last week. They're struggling to score 80. It's just it's kind of ridiculous to me that the two-time defending champs could come out with this kind of effort.
I tend to agree with you. And I heard the experts. I heard a lot of the analysis as far as, the Pacers' size. And, look, I've said this before. The Pacers' size is an issue, but I think from Miami's standpoint, though, you have ways to combat that they've done in the past, and it doesn't seem like their effort was there. And so I've said this before, basketball is a game, especially in the NBA, where it's really simple. If you can effectively get in the paint on a consistent basis, you control the action. Indiana, from what I saw, got a lot of inside-out action, and then they hit shots, something they don't normally do. But we're going to take a little bit closer examination of this series a little bit later in the show, Mark, because tonight we have the other Final Four matchup, the Western Conference Finals. Some intriguing dynamics in this Thunder and Spurs series, Mark. Of course, when we went off the air, we didn't know that Serge Ibaka was going to be officially out. We knew he was banged up, but now we know he is out. So has that changed your perspective on this series?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that and Tony Parker being hurt.
Yes.
I think obviously Tony Parker, his injury is a little bit more serious than Serge Ibaka as far as the impact on the team. It's Serge Ibaka, the third best player, and Tony Parker, arguably the best player on the Spurs team. So I think that if Tony Parker's hurt bad enough, and that may swing the pendulum back in Oklahoma City's favor, it will definitely swing the pendulum back in Oklahoma City's favor if Tony Parker can't go. But, the way that the Spurs are, even if one guy's a little bit down, they're more of a five-man team than a one- or two-man team anyway. So I still expect that this Ibaka injury is going to have a big impact on Oklahoma City. I'm going to be very interested to see who can win this series.
Me too, and you mentioned Tony Parker. To me, that's still where it's at because if Tony Parker's healthy, then yes, I think San Antonio will win the series. I think my prediction that I made last week will be wrong, but I'm still holding out for Tony Parker because you touched on it. he means so much to the San Antonio Spurs. Look, I know they do share the ball. They play team basketball. But when you get to the conference finals, you have to have an individual player that can make some things happen. You can't be in what I call clinic mode for the Spurs for all 48 minutes of a game. And you look at Miami, they have two individuals. The Thunder have two individuals. The Pacers, they got to win game 2 before I respect them. So when you look at the 3 contenders, they all have individual players that at critical moments can get the job done. For the San Antonio Spurs, it's Tony Parker. He's the best individual player on that team. And without him, I still feel like a Serge Ibaka's Thunder have the advantage. But if he's healthy, and I think San Antonio can absolutely win that series, Mark. I look forward to getting into that series a little bit later as well. But I do want to touch on some local sports, Mark. You know, we always keep our thumb on what's going on here in the Arkansas River Valley. And we will be honoring several River Valley athletes at our Brightest Stars banquet May 29th. It is creeping upon us. If you have not gotten your tickets yet, they are $25. You can purchase them online or at various locations around the River Valley. Mark, you can tell them more about those locations. But we had some teams competing for state championships berths, and some teams were successful. Some teams came up short.
Yeah, we had Russellville go 4-0 in the first 2 to 3 rounds, and then they go into the semifinal round with a chance to go to the state championship. The boys soccer team is able to get it done. The girls soccer and softball teams lose 2-1 heartbreakers, both teams.
Oh.
And then the boys baseball team beat Benton 5-1, and they've got a shot at going to the 6A state championship game there in baseball. And the prohibitive favorite going into the tournament, the Jonesboro Hurricane, got beat in the first round or maybe the second round early on in the tournament. So it was a big upset. And Russellville now has, the door's wide open for the Russellville boys soccer and baseball teams to win state championships. I know that the Pottsville Lady Apache softball team got up 7-1 going into the 7th inning and just blew it in the 7th inning, lost 8-7, a heartbreaking loss for those ladies. And then the Hector softball team was in the semifinals. I'd have to see how they got, if they got any further than that, but the Dover baseball team lost in the first round of the baseball state playoffs, and the Pottsville baseball team lost a heartbreaker in the first round of the state baseball playoffs as well. So lots of competition from these teams. Lots of teams made the state tournament. Big congratulations to the Russellville baseball and boys soccer teams for making the finals.
Absolutely, Mark. And I'm just thinking about Russellville baseball. We talked about the veterans they had a couple of years ago and how it's taken some time to rebuild, get some more experience under their belt. But for them to be back in contention for a state title is really impressive for that program. And I mentioned, Mark, earlier, the Brightest Stars banquet taking place May 29th. Can you give us an update on how that's going, the process, the planning, the tickets? Where are we at right now with the banquet?
Yeah, it's going to be next Thursday, 6 o'clock. Almost said tip-off. There's 6 o'clock there at Russellville High School at the cafeteria. I just emailed Aaron Peters just a moment ago trying to nail down some details with him. I'm going to be driving back by Two Rivers High School today, going to stop in and visit with them for a little bit. Hopefully they can get some folks to come. I know that we got news the other day that the boys and girls state conferences, I guess is what you would call it, are during the Brightest Stars banquet. So we're going to have some kids who are unable to come, which is just an absolute heartbreaker to me. But we're still going to have a whole lot of folks who are going to be able to show up. And, on the 29th, like we mentioned, we're going to be giving certificates of nomination to over 100 student athletes who were nominated by their coaches. And then of the 115-plus nominees, you've got finalists in 22 awards. They're all going to obviously receive that certificate, and then a winner is going to receive a plaque. And we're just going to have a Italian Gardens dinner, and Aaron Peters from Razorback Nation is going to be our MC. We're going to have local celebrities presenting these awards. We're going to have folks from all the way from the radio stations and Arkansas Tech and just business people throughout the community. It's just going to be a real cool community event and a night when we can come together. And I was reading a little bit, Weldon, this morning about some stuff that had been going on in Russellville over the past couple months. You've got the Russ Vegas Half Marathon, you've got balloons over Russ Vegas, you've got the Bassmasters tournament, you've got all the state tournaments in soccer, you've got all this stuff going on in Russellville, and there's no better time to, throw an event in Russellville and to see the community kind of come together then a time when it's already kind of buzzing around the River Valley.
Now, careful, Mark. Don't be saying Russ Vegas. Some people might jump on you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know
if you get in trouble.
Yeah, I don't know if you haven't heard. You can check out the story on rivervalleyleader.com. There's a little angst over calling the great city of Russellville Russ Vegas, because apparently when you come into Russellville, you might get it confused with Vegas. So, apparently the cities are the same thing. We don't want people getting that crossed up. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things are going on, Mark, and I know the boys and girls state's going on, but when you have events this time of year, you're trying to honor students who are either graduating or getting ready for their next year of school. And, there's bound to be some scheduling conflicts, but, we're still going to honor those who aren't able to come. And for those who are able to come, it's going to be a spectacular event for you individuals. And do want to remind everybody, while we're talking local sports, Arkansas Tech baseball, their season has come to an end. They fell as they tried to make their way back through the losers bracket. They lost to Minnesota State Mankato, who did go on to win the Central Regional. But Arkansas Tech, GAC champions, a dominant regular season, obviously hosting a regional. Shout out to them. Congrats on a great season. And then Lady Cyclone, Golden Sun golfer Rebecca Sertival finishes third in the individuals of the NCAA Division II Women's Golf Tournament, helping Arkansas Tech finish ninth as far as the women's golf. So shout out to the baseball team, Mark and Rebecca Sertival. Yeah,
congratulations, Arkansas Tech, getting ready to hoist that Great American Conference All-Sports trophy once again.
Absolutely. So that's our local sports segment. Mark told you about the Brightest Stars Banquet. Again, May 29th is the date, so get your tickets if you don't have them. Again, you can go to rivervalleyleader.com to get information on those tickets. You can purchase hard copies from around businesses around the area. If you do purchase online, know that you just show up, identify yourself with proper ID, and you'll get in. You don't have to print out anything or worry about anything as well. So, Mark, back on the national scene here, and I want to touch on a little bit of a topic before we go to break. Robert Mathis, NFL sack leader, of course, one of the few big-time players remaining from the Peyton Manning era. Again, he had a sensational year last year. He is suspended under the NFL's drug policy, a substance called Clomid. Now, the story is, Mark, that Clomid is a male fertility treatment option. He and his wife reportedly were trying to conceive. They have conceived. She is currently with child, but Clomid is on the banned substance list, and it's used as a masking agent as far as athletic circles. Not necessarily a drug itself, but it is a masking agent. He has been suspended 4 games. His representatives are trying to fight it. They're arguing. They're not arguing that he took it. They're just arguing that why he took it. It's become a mess, but the league, Mark, it sounds like they're clear on their stance.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because it seems like Robert Mathis is trying to get out in front of it. He was trying to do what he felt was the right thing, but it's either he was doing something wrong or it was the biggest coincidence in the history of coincidences that the guy's, in the twilight of his career and he has the best years statistically ever. It's just kind of hard for me, and I know I'm cynical, but it's kind of hard for me to believe that a guy, coming down in I heard his agent talk about how he's in the 3-4 now instead of the 4-3, so he, that's why his stats were different. But it's just hard for me to believe that a guy is suspended for performance-enhancing drugs after the best year of his career, and it wasn't done on purpose. I know that it, like you said, it was a masking agent, and it's the same thing Manny Ramirez took, if I'm not mistaken. It cost him 50 games or more in Major League Baseball. So it's kind of unfortunate. I understand, where he's coming from if that's true, but it seems to me more like it's a little bit fishy, and he was trying to add some years and some stats to the end of his career.
It's really tough because, as a human, just from person to person, I want to say I'm inclined to believe him. But policy is policy, and you have policy for a reason. And I've probably used policy in a sentence more times than anybody ever will. But, it's pretty crystal clear. There's a reason why you have rules in place. It's so you don't have gray areas. It's so you don't have to look at things on a case-by-case basis. It's so you don't have to make decisions that may be unfair to one person, then make a different decision that's unfair to another. You have hard set rules so you can avoid any confusion, any gray area whatsoever. Again, is it understandable if he and his wife are trying to conceive? Absolutely. The fact that she is pregnant now, does that help his case? Sure. All that stuff does look good. It falls in line. But for me, we talk about burden of proof in the court of law. To me, the burden of proof in this case falls on Robert Mathis because the league, all they're doing is following the policy. They're not coming down to any decision. There's not really a whole lot of subjective nature to this situation whatsoever. They're following policy and protocol. And so it's up to Robert Mathis to bring definitive proof and say, hey, this is why I shouldn't be suspended X, Y, and Z. And his circumstantial evidence is really good. But in the end, he still violated policy. He sounds like a high character guy from what I understand, and all these things are great, but he did violate policy, and he's going to have to be suspended. If he is telling the truth, Mark, the only part I hate about it is his reputation is kind of in the mud. But again, you got to follow protocol.
Yeah, worst case scenario for Robert Mathis, he has to sit out these 4 games. He's still getting paid. He's not going to get paid less, I don't think, if I'm not mistaken. And if it is, it's a minuscule amount for a guy who's a multimillionaire who's going to miss 4 game checks, which I'm not sure about that. And then he'll have, 12 more games left to play. He may have more in the tank at the end of next year to help his team. So, there may be a silver lining sort of to this situation, and the fact that he's got that baby he's going to be able to hold. So if that's, if he's telling the truth, he'll be able to look at himself in the mirror. He'll be able to look at that baby, and he'll be all right with it in the end.
Spoken like a true father, Mark Freeman, telling Robert Mathis when he's able to hold his child. So we'll continue to monitor the Robert Mathis situation. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to look at the conference finals. Again, we touched a little bit on the East. We touched a little bit on the West. Going to break that down a little bit more. NBA coaching jobs open. Kevin Love, should the Minnesota Timberwolves trade him? All of that and more when we come back on the Sports Blitz.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KARK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz, a beautiful Monday edition here in the Cogswell Motors studio. Very proud to have Cogswell home with us here. Eastern Conference Finals, Mark and I touched on it earlier. We still have Mark Freeman on the phone with us. Matty is still pretending like he's running the show, and even though I don't really think he is. But nonetheless, Mark, we talked about Miami falling to game one against the Indiana Pacers. What does it mean? Is it significant? Do you expect the trend to continue? Tell us about, in your opinion, Mark, the overall feeling you're getting as far as game one and your perspective on the series. Has anything really changed for you?
Well, looking at the numbers, Miami giving up 51% to a team who, shooting to a team who is struggling to score. That's an issue. You talked about the post play, and obviously Chris Bosh and LeBron James are not going to be able to get it done against Roy Hibbert and David West. LeBron can probably guard David West in stretches, but when he's got to run the offense too, it's been too much. They're going to have to get something from guys like Udonis Haslem and Birdman, and I don't know why they signed Greg Oden if he's not going to be able to play in this series. So that's kind of a question mark to me that he's inactive. And then I looked at the numbers, and for a team, I know that Miami's kind of like the Arkansas Razorbacks in basketball, where they foul a little bit more than the other team. But 11 more fouls and 22 more free throws for Indiana. It seems like they were either A, being uber aggressive, or B, they got the benefit of the home whistle a little bit in game one. I expect that game two will sort of even out a little bit, and I definitely don't expect that Miami's going to come out with that sort of effort. I always go back to the year Derrick Rose won the MVP. I guess it was 2011.
Right.
And the Bulls beat the Heat in game one, and then the Heat came back and won the next four, right? And then Thunder beat the Heat in game one, and then the Heat come back and win the next four. It's just one of those things where sometimes in game one they come out and they just suck. They just lay an absolute egg, and then they come back and bounce back from there. I don't understand it, don't like it, don't really know why they do it, but the Heat have proven year in and year out that one game will get their attention, and then from there on they'll play a lot harder. I'm expecting a different result in game two.
Yeah. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he has sold 20 used cars. He has done several things. He has produced many shows. Presenting to you, Matty Lassiter.
Thank you. What I was going to say is, Mark, neither of you guys got to watch the game, so you were talking about the discrepancy between the free throws. And I was watching that closely, okay? And I want, as a Heat fan, as a LeBron fan, to say, oh, yeah, they were getting the home whistle and all that, but they really weren't. It was really well called. It was just like Mark said, they were being very aggressive. And so, LeBron shooting hardly any free throws like that. I think they showed his average free throws through the playoffs per game, and it was just like completely, more than cut in half in this game. I don't remember what it was, but you guys can look up the stats. Quit being lazy. All you listeners. But yeah, it really was that. It wasn't a home whistle thing. I didn't think at all, and I wanted to think that because I was laying on the couch watching this at home, and I was pissed. Okay, I was screaming at the TV, and I wanted to think that, but it really was well called. It was just the Heat had a bad game, and the Pacers played as well as I have ever seen them play.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, my only positive as far as how the Pacers could win this series was I said they had to score 100 points in 2 games. I mean, they accomplished it in one. So if they can score 100 points in another game, maybe they'll win the series. But, a series, so many people just overreact to game one. I mean, it's game one of a series in which Indiana has the first 2 at home. I mean, Indiana had to win at least one of these games. I mean, they got one. They'll have a chance to get 2, but it really didn't shock me that Indiana won game one. I think the fashion in which they won it was surprising, to be able to score a bunch of points and to do it that way. But, I've said this before with the lineups, because that's really what Miami, Indiana always comes down to is, can you play LeBron at the 4, or do you have to move him to the 3 and sacrifice shooting and spacing on offense? And so if David West is physical, David West did a good job physically with LeBron. I think he made it tougher on him from what I understand. He was physical. If you have to bring another big in, I think it's got to be Udonis Haslem, because at least Haslem can hit that mid-range jump shot so you're not completely clogging up the floor. But I think in the end, Mark, it's about Chris Bosh, because we know Miami's at the best when Bosh and LeBron are the front line, but Chris Bosh has got to make Roy Hibbert pay by just baptizing him with that jump shot and pulling him out. If he can't baptize Hibbert with that jumper, then I think it's going to be tougher for Miami. But either way, Mark, I think Spoelstra's going to decide, do I go big and hurt my offense, or do I stay small and possibly be weaker on the inside defensively?
No, you made a good point with the Udonis Haslam. You know, he's famous for that little short corner jumper. And, you know, Chris Anderson, as much as I like watching Birdman, he kind of defeats the purpose of helping, you know, spread the floor, because Indiana wants to plug the paint anyway, make Miami hit jump shots and keep LeBron and D-Wade out of the paint. And Chris Anderson sort of lives in the paint, too. So, you know, he ain't hitting a jump shot. So, Chris Bosh, you know, I was talking with Coach Garrett Hill yesterday, and he was mad about two things. One, he hates, well, three things really. One, he hates Mario Chalmers, and he just can't stand watching him play. And apparently George Hill lit him up yesterday. And then Chris Bosh, if he, you know, he's famous for saying, as Coach Hill, that if Chris Bosh isn't hitting shots, then he's just worthless. So he's got to, like you said, he's got to stand out there and hit jump shots. And then, you know, one thing I've noticed with Indiana is that they've gotten a little bit of confidence with Roy Hibbert against Miami, because they know that they've got a huge advantage inside. When they're playing Atlanta, when they're playing Washington, they sort of get drug out and, you know, hit threes on them, and Roy Hibbert has a bad couple minutes, and then they have to yank him. They don't put him back in because he, you know, no points, no rebounds type of thing. Well, now they're to the point against Miami where they know Roy Hibbert can be successful, and they got to keep plugging away, and that's just a huge disadvantage for Miami in the paint. So, I want to see, like you said, I want to see LeBron be able to play outside of the paint. I don't want him to have to play the four and have to, you know, bang with David West, because, you know, David West isn't asked to carry the load offensively and distribute the ball and then guard, you know, somebody great on the other end as much as LeBron is. So I'd rather see him play the three and guard a guy like Paul George and, you know, save himself a little bit for offense, so to speak. But you know, I'm with you guys on this series the way it's gone. Game one, I hate seeing Indiana get any more confidence than they already had against Miami.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And I'll just say this. You know, I got to give a guy credit who I've really challenged. I mean, I challenged him by saying he could be the greatest role player in the history of the NBA, and that's Paul George. Look, I said this about a month ago. If Indiana wants any chance to compete for a championship, Paul George is going to have to enter that superstar category. Yes, he's top 10-ish right now, but he's going to have to be top 5 legitimately for Indiana to have a chance. He's got to play like a star. He had a big game. Indiana shot the ball well. My question would be, can they shoot it again? And I'm going to say this. If you're Indiana, you got to look at game 2 like a must-win, because you could still lose home court advantage and give it right back to Miami. You got to hold serve, go up 2-0. If Indiana goes up 2-0, then they'll have my attention as far as saying, Miami really needs to look at some things. But a high-scoring game 1, confidence, home crowd. We'll see what happens in game 2. Matty has just waved his head, said heat in game 2. I think Miami will win. That's why I'm not getting interested unless Indiana wins, Mark.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. You watch the way that, and I was obviously listening to the first quarter of that game when Indiana comes out and they hit like 6-7 threes. Who does that? I mean, I know Miami gives up easy shots sometimes and lots of threes. You know, Brooklyn hit 15 in a game, and that's kind of where that joke came from about, you know, what do you have to do to beat Miami? Make every shot you take. But Indiana, the emotion that they played with, the energy that they played with in game 1, they'd have to basically, if I were an Indiana Pacers fan, I would have had more confidence if Indiana had won an ugly game where they hadn't played necessarily their best, Miami hadn't either, and we still found a way to win. Mm-hmm. But when you play about as well as you possibly can in game 1 and you win that way, you know Miami's coming back and playing better in game 2. You can still lose home court advantage. I think that would be an absolute heartbreaker to the Indiana Pacers to lose game 2.
Oh, I completely agree with you, Mark. And we want to shift over to the Western Conference now. We'll continue to follow what's going on in the East, but San Antonio, Oklahoma City, the top 2 seeds in the Western Conference. Not really a huge surprise that we got these two. I know some people thought the Clippers might sneak in, maybe a small population thought Houston or somebody, but really the 2 teams we thought, Oklahoma City and San Antonio. I look at this matchup, Mark, and of course we're going to talk about the injuries, but just the physical matchup is just so much in the favor of Oklahoma City. And I know Serge Ibaka being out is going to limit that to a degree, but I'm still looking at Kevin Durant, still looking at Russell Westbrook against Tony Parker. To me, that's why the series is up in the air for me. I can't just completely jump on the Spurs bandwagon as far as picking them, because Tony Parker, even if he does play, I don't think he'll be 100%, especially over a 7-game series. And when you play against Russell Westbrook, it takes so much out of you. Chris Paul, arguably the best point guard in the game, playing against Westbrook, I mean, that was a physical just battle. Tony Parker, we've seen him, and I think this happened a couple of years ago, when you're having a guard bigger, stronger, more athletic Westbrook, over the course of a 7-game series, it just takes away from your offense. It takes away from your energy. And so a less than 100% Tony Parker against a Westbrook, I still think is a challenge for a Spurs team that I would love to see make the NBA Finals, but I'm not quite ready to jump on them yet, Mark.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, all the signs point toward Oklahoma City being able to win this series if Tony Parker's not 100%. But, I've seen the Spurs do this too many stinking times. Tim Duncan's not quite healthy, Manu Ginobili's not quite healthy, or Tony Parker, he's got questions about this or that. He had questions about his hamstring against the Miami Heat last year, and they nearly still won that series. So I'm going with the Spurs just simply because of the fact that I don't know how they'll do it, but somehow or another, that I believe that they'll get it done. And if I'm being completely honest, well, I'm rooting for Oklahoma City because 2 reasons. One, I think I like watching them play more, and I am a little bit more scared of the San Antonio Spurs against the Miami Heat in the finals if that's how it happens. So if I'm being honest, I'm kind of rooting against my pick, so I'll be happy either way.
Yeah.
But now I'm also kind of believing that Tony Parker is going to be a little bit better than he'll be able to play, and obviously Serge Ibaka is not.
Yeah, okay. Help me out with this, because maybe I may need a little bit of assistance, because this is what I'm hung up on. What happened 2 years ago did such psychological damage to me that I don't know if I can recover to even see the Spurs in the same light. I mean, the Spurs sliced Oklahoma City mercilessly for 2 games, and then for 4 straight games, the Thunder made them look like they should have retired 3 years before. Maybe I just can't get that image out of my mind. Do you think James Harden is the reason why Oklahoma City can't duplicate that same performance? Is that kind of where you're at?
Well, I mean, not necessarily. I'm sure that helped a lot in that series. I remember James Harden was really good, but Oklahoma City was 4-0 against San Antonio this year in the regular season, too. So
True.
It is a bad matchup for San Antonio. And like I said, I really honestly don't have any reason to pick San Antonio to win other than the fact that this is sort of a last hurrah for a guy like Tim Duncan. Kawhi Leonard's on the up and up. Ginobili, this probably will be his last shot at something like this. And I don't know. It's just hard to count out the old dog. It's just like I feel like they'll figure a way to get it done. No explanation for it. Don't really know how. I mean, we talked about the Portland Trailblazers, and you'd think that youth and that exuberance and energy would be able to. No, 4-1. They got smoked. So there's no real reason or rhyme to why I picked San Antonio, other than the fact that I just have this sneaking suspicion.
You could be right. All right, Mark, I know you got to go really quick, but I want to give you a choice. I got 2 topics here. I'm going to let you hit one before we get out. You want to talk Kevin Love or top NBA prospects, Wiggins, Embiid, or Parker? Your choice.
Man, well, I'll just say this. I would probably take Wiggins, and Kevin Love is right to want to get out.
Hey, he wrapped it up pretty quickly. I'll give my thoughts after break on those two issues because Mark, you brought up a couple of really good points. I want to give them their justice when we come back. Mark, thank you for joining us. Know you're busy, man. Look forward to seeing you back in the office so we can talk about what goes on in these NBA playoffs. When we come back, we are going to hit the NBA draft. Kevin Love, Johnny Manziel, the backup, and the Arkansas Razorbacks tuned up for a baseball postseason run. Don't go away.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
Just another Monday on the Sports Blitz here in the Cogswell Motors studio. Maddie is bringing it home. Dave is helping him anytime he falters. Shout out to Dave Brown. We talked about before the break, before Mark had to go, Kevin Love. He has told the Minnesota Timberwolves reportedly that he will indeed test the free agent market. He has 1 year left on his contract. He will be a free agent next summer is what he's scheduled to be. Obviously, Minnesota's trying to lock him up. They're trying to give him a contract extension. He's not feeling it right now. I think he is willing to play out the rest of the season, the 2014-2015 season, and then see what's out there on the free agent market. He could be trying to force Minnesota's hand, saying, look, I'm not going to sign, so shop me around, get me on a contender. Kevin Love's a guy who, I know if you've heard me talk about Kevin Love, you may think I've been critical of him, but it's all relatively speaking. Look, Kevin Love is one of the top 15 or so players in the game. I mean, he just is, but he's not a transcendent star. Kevin Love is not going to be your #1 guy that takes you to a championship. To me, that's why he's not a superstar. Will he compile stats? Yeah. He's going to do work on the glass. He's going to shoot some jump shots. He's going to get offensive rebounds. Look, Kevin Love can play.
He's a Chris Bosh.
Not
that they play the same way.
Yeah.
But, he's not, like you're saying, he's not a superstar.
You know what?
He's a star.
He's a star. You know what? I'll even give him more than I give Chris Bosh. I'll even give him that much, just so you all know I like me some Kevin Love. But what I'm saying is there's a group of guys in the league right now that they're really good, but they can't take you anywhere. Like right now, DeMarcus Cousins, really good player, can score like 30 and 15. I don't think he's taking you anywhere, at least not yet. He's still a young player. Al Jefferson, maybe the Bobcats could have won a game against the Heat. Probably not. But that's about as much as Al Jefferson's taking you. But these guys are scoring like 30 points, 15 rebounds a game. But they're not transcendent players. They don't make players around them better. So I think when you look at Kevin Love, you have to put him in perspective. Can he be the number 2 or number 3 on a championship team? Absolutely he can. But I think the hype around him, the talk around him is so high to where people are elevating him to number 1 status, number 1 option on a team. And I just don't think he's that guy. Look, I know Minnesota wasn't loaded top to bottom, but I think if Kevin Love was a transcendent player and, you had Kevin Martin, Rubio as a point guard, I think they should have pushed closer to the playoffs. And so I think when Golden State, a team like Chicago, a lot of teams are going to be interested in trading for Kevin Love. I don't blame him for wanting out of Minnesota. Ricky Rubio is a point guard who he's good, but his development isn't quite what you thought it would be at this point. You knew coming to the league, he could handle the ball, he could play defense. He's 6'5", he's got the size and the range, and you thought, okay, his jump shot will eventually come. His jump shot's gotten worse, and I don't know if the ACL injury coming off that had something to do with it, but Ricky Rubio is to the point to where he's almost a scoring liability. It's one thing to be like Rondo, who's not noted for his scoring, but Rondo can put it in the hole when you need it. I mean, he did drop 44 on the Miami Heat in the playoff series a few years ago. Ricky Rubio just literally can't score, and he's your second star. I don't blame Kevin Love for wanting out. But you look at a trade and say, well, they just trade. They can trade Kevin Love. He'll be happy. He'll go to a contender. They'll get some pieces back for him instead of letting him go for free. The problem is any team that trades for Kevin Love is going to demand that he signs an extension or the trade won't go through, because obviously you're not going to give up a ton of assets for a guy who's going to be there for less than a year. So you're going to trade him to a team who's going to insist he signs an extension. Well, that kind of limits the pool, because really Kevin Love can tell you who he does and doesn't want to go to, in a sense. He's like, no, I'm not going to sign an extension with you, or, yeah, I'll sign a contract extension with you. He can make that decision. And so I think it's going to be tough, because what the Timberwolves probably want, a compensation package, could deplete the other team so much to where they're no longer desirable. You could say, well, Kevin, we traded for you. We could have been a good team, but Minnesota took all of our assets just so you could come be on our team. So we're no longer a good team. So I think that's kind of the catch-22. I'll be interested to see how that situation goes with Mr. Kevin Love. But NBA players, Kevin Love came out a few years ago in the NBA draft, and we have a few top NBA draft prospects coming up here in the 2014 draft. I think most people will agree, at least at this point, that Andrew Wiggins, Joel Embiid, and Jabari Parker will go 1, 2, and 3 in some order. It depends on what you like. Wiggins is a guy who athletically, he's phenomenal. I mean, a tremendous talent. He's 6'7", 6'8". He's going to be a 2-guard in the league. His skill set will develop, but to what degree is a question. And for me, I question Andrew Wiggins in terms of, does he have the mentality to live up to his physical ability? Because to me right now, he reminds me of a more athletic, less skilled version of Joe Johnson. Like when I see Andrew Wiggins, that's what I think. Way more explosive than Joe ever was, but not quite as skilled as Joe was when he was going into the NBA. And if you look at Joe Johnson's career, has he been a really good player? Absolutely. Multiple All-Star game appearances. But you always knew Joe just wasn't the guy that could take you to a championship. And I think Atlanta realized that, and it kind of broke things up because he was their leader for a few years. And so with Wiggins, he's being compared to LeBron as far as his athletic gifts and all these different things. But is he going to be that alpha dog that's going to take you somewhere, put your team on his back and take you to a championship? Or is he going to be a guy who you're like, man, that guy's really talented. I don't know why he disappears sometimes and you don't even know he's on the floor. But, boy, when he does lock in and play, he's really good. You can't be a leader of a team and have that mentality. So I wonder with Wiggins. He's young. He can develop, but usually that killer instinct, you see a little bit of it. Here's a guy who had like some 4-point games in some nights at Kansas. Had some 30-point games, absolutely, but you wonder about those 4-point outings. NBA is a different game. It's going to open up more, more up-tempo, more space. So it'll be a different game than college, but I wonder about Wiggins. Joel Embiid, long, 7 feet plus, athletic, shot blocker. His offense is coming along. He's showing offense. If his back is healthy, he may be the guy for me, but, we've seen this league drafting big men with health questions early. You got to be cautious with it. I think the medical evaluation on Joel Embiid is imperative, and even if you get the evaluation that you want to hear, you'll still have questions in the back of your mind if you talk about taking Joel Embiid. And then Jabari Parker's interesting to me. His ceiling is probably the lowest of all the three of these players. That's the knock on him. Most people believe that with Jabari Parker, right now what you see is what you're going to get for the most part. He'll improve a little bit, but pretty much this is the Jabari Parker you're going to get. And so how much do you like him? How okay are you with the fact that he's not going to go up another 3 or 4 notches like Wiggins and Embiid will? And then his weight. Jabari Parker's a guy, he got hurt in high school, gained some weight, and trimmed up at Duke. But now reports are he's put on about 10 to 15 pounds from the latter part of the season into right now. That's not a good thing. Jabari Parker at one point was playing at around 240 pounds. That's too much. Is he a bigger player? Yeah, he's bigger. He's going to play around 225. But I don't think teams want him playing at 235, 240. So I think that's a question with Parker. And one issue I have with Jabari is, to me, he got worse as the season went on. We remember that showcase in Chicago where you had Michigan State versus Kentucky, then you had Duke and Kansas, kind of a showcase 2-game series. And Jabari Parker looked like he could be the number 1 pick right there that night. That was early in the season. From that point, I don't remember Jabari Parker playing better than he did that night, and that's a little bit of a concern for me. So, those are the top 3 draft prospects. We'll see how their stock rises and falls as the season goes on, and how well they play. Can somebody crack that top 3? Julius Randle, the Kentucky power forward, showed well at the NBA Combine. He's coachable. He's willing to learn. He's got a tremendous raw physical skill set. Can he develop? If so, I think he can be a really good NBA player. And then there's some guys creeping up. Dante Exum, he's the guy nobody really knows about. He's an Australian point guard, but tremendously athletic. He's gifted as well. So, we'll keep you posted on the NBA draft. A lot of these guys will be rising and falling as time goes on. So let's look at the NBA. In the NFL, Johnny Manziel, his owner, has come out and said Johnny Manziel is the backup, and he's made it clear, Mr. Haslam. Manziel, this is a blue collar city. This is not Hollywood. He's going to have to come in here. He's going to have to work. And some of Johnny Manziel's supporters were a little bit turned off by that. Saying, if you want Johnny, you got to embrace him. You got to embrace how brash he is. You got to embrace everything that makes Johnny football who he is. And if you try to muzzle that, you're going to take away from him. And all this hysteria. I don't think it's quite that bad. I think it's one of those things where he's Johnny football. He's coming in with his own brand, his own name. But you have to make sure he understands where he fits within the concept of professional football. This guy has not thrown one NFL pass. He's not rushed for one NFL yard. And so it's a little bit strange having a guy with a huge brand being a guy who is all of a sudden looked at as a leader of your football team. And so while the comments may have been a little bit off-putting, they're a little bit understandable. I think he'll end up winning the starting job. They can talk Brian Hoyer all they want. Yeah, I understand Hoyer played well last year before getting hurt, but still, I expect Johnny Manziel to take that over as far as the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. So, that's our take on that. Yeah, Matty reminded him. Johnny Manziel said he's going to wreck the league. That's what he told Cleveland Brown quarterback coach Dow Loganes, according to Mike Greenberg. Obviously, he's not familiar with our boy Dow Loggins, one of the greatest holders in the history of Arkansas Razorback football, now the quarterback coach with the Cleveland Browns. And we talked about this with Mark on Friday. That story just really took off. It was on Sports Talk with Bo Mattingly, and I heard the interview with Dow Loggins, and seemed, harmless at the time, but I wake up the next morning, Mike and Mike are talking about it. That afternoon, Around the Horns talking about it, PTI. I mean, and he just blew up nationally. So a comment that Dow made on Sports Talk with Bo Mattingly, so I thought that was intriguing. But as always, we will look at that situation. We'll see if Johnny Manziel is the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. But we are going to take our final break, Matty. Final break of the Sports Blitz today. When we come back, we're going to bring it home, an update on the situation with Michael Sam and his reality television show. Also, our Hog Talk, the Razorbacks get a sweep against Missouri. Now they're set to take on the Texas A&M Aggies in the SEC tournament. We'll preview all that for you when we come back.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
We are bringing it home here on the Sports Blitz. I am Weldon Braxton, joined by Matty Lassiter, and there is no Mark Freeman. You heard Mark earlier on today's show, and if you didn't hear him, you can watch the replay of the Sports Blitz. We would be more than happy to. It'll drive up our ratings. It'll make me look better. So go ahead and check that out if you want to see a replay of today's show. We talked Johnny Manziel just before the break, his situation with Cleveland. They're keeping him guarded from the media, trying to protect him, all that good stuff. In the end, Johnny Football is going to be Johnny Football. He's going to speak to the media. He's going to be who he is. But, also in the NFL, speaking of distractions, we've documented the Michael Sam situation. And from the time he got drafted to the press conference with the St. Louis Rams, documented his mini camp and how, it showed him out there on the field. And and his reality show that nobody knew about till recently had a deal set up with the Oprah Winfrey Network to sort of document his journey through training camp and trying to make the St. Louis Rams roster, obviously being the first openly gay player in the NFL. But the Oprah Winfrey Network has put the brakes on it. They want Michael, according to the network, they want Michael to focus on trying to make the Rams team. They don't want any extra cameras. They don't want to distract him. They want to give him every opportunity to make the St. Louis Rams roster. Makes sense. I'll bring up the same question and issue that I've had, really since this reality show stuff broke. And that's, Michael, you say you just want it to be all about football. You're like you said, yeah, I understand, I get it. But in the end, I want this to blow over so I can just be a football player. I don't want to be known as a gay football player or whatever the case may be. But this reality show is just a contradiction, in my opinion. I question it. I'm wondering, if you're all about football, then why are you continuing to perpetuate the outside narrative by having this show and putting that part of your life on full display? And I know he's not ashamed of his life, but at the same time, as long as you put it out there, that's what the talk is going to be. You understand that it's not going to be just about football. So, I mean, that's something that I would question with Michael Sam, as far as what really are you trying to get out of this? And I know the cameras aren't going to be following you in the Rams facility or in the locker room or anything like that, but still, it's documenting your journey at home with your family and all that good stuff, and it could serve as a distraction. From a football standpoint, I've said this pretty consistently. He's going to have to contribute on special teams, and he's going to have to be a pass rush specialist. I still can't project him as an every down player in the NFL, much less with the St. Louis Rams, who may have secured the top defensive line in the NFL with the drafting of Aaron Donald in the first round of the NFL draft. You put him with Brockers, you put him with Quinn, you're looking at pure dominance. Michael Sam may get himself on the field in third downs, but that's a best case scenario. So Michael Sam and the Oprah Winfrey Network putting plans on hold. I got to make that clear. Putting plans on hold. They have not canceled it, but for right now, the reality show will not be produced. Arkansas Razorbacks. It is time for that portion of our show where we hit everything to do with the Arkansas Razorbacks. A little bit of a slow time. Spring football is over. Of course, we talked about the spring game. Basketball, certainly months away, but baseball is heating up. Hogs go to Missouri. They get a sweep of the lowly Missouri Tigers. I mean, Missouri is terrible. I mean, you play some Razorback music, do what you got to do, because Missouri was awful. You had to win the series, and you really needed to sweep them. Arkansas does all of that. The final game was a little bit of a tester. Missouri was out to a lead. Arkansas had to keep battling. They fought back, won that game to complete the sweep. And as we look here at the SEC tournament bracket, they have secured the 7 seed. They will take on 10 seed Texas A&M tomorrow. So that game is tomorrow. Single elimination in the first round. So if you're kind of unsure, baseball, the bracket's a little bit strange, but in round 1, it is single elimination. So if you get beat in round 1, you go home. If you win in round 2 and win in round 1 and you go to round 2, you are now in the double elimination part. So you can lose in round 2 and still keep yourself alive. So single elimination, Arkansas will need to beat Texas A&M in order to continue in the tournament. Again, that game is tomorrow. The time will be right after the 9:30 a.m. game. So Vanderbilt and Tennessee will play tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. And then, of course, you give the proper in-between time, and Arkansas will be playing Texas A&M at that point. A&M's a team offensively. They've played well. They came to Baum Stadium last weekend, and Arkansas won the series against the Aggies. So I think that's certainly a confidence boost. We'll have to see where Arkansas is at health-wise with Jalen Beeks. We've been monitoring Jake Wise and seeing how they're doing in that regard. But it feels like it's the same old Arkansas team. The pitching is solid. The pitching will keep them in games. Offensively, kind of hit and miss. Although I'll say this, offensively they've been a little bit better, a little more consistent than in years past. I'll give them that. But on the flip side, the pitching, while it's strong, not the same dominance of the last couple of years. But you know what? Maybe you need a good mix to make your way into the NCAA regional. A lot of the question going on today, and we didn't have our CrossFit Russellville poll question, but if we did, it would be something along the lines of this. What does Arkansas need to get done to feel good about their chances of making a regional? Some people would argue they're already in. Some people think they've done enough. Others believe they need to at least beat A&M, and even if they were to lose their next two, they could be all right. So we'll have to see. I'm inclined to believe that if they were to knock off Texas A&M, I think that would be enough. I'm not sure that they're not already in as it stands. I think a win against A&M would go a long way as far as getting the Hogs into a regional. Dave Van Horn has yet to miss a regional as a head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. So, as they go into the postseason, expectations don't feel to be as high as what they've been in years past, but nonetheless, you expect the Hogs to be in a regional and competing for a chance to possibly go to a super regional in maybe Omaha. So we'll have to see how that goes. But as we close up shop today on the Sports Blitz, looking at some headlines from around the country, the New York Knicks looking at Derek Fisher as their possible next head coach. I mean, he's not doing anything right now. Oh, wait. Yeah, he's playing basketball right now in the Western Conference Finals. That's what Derek Fisher is doing. But even so, he is a candidate to be coaching the New York Knicks. I guess you got to give Jason Kidd some credit in the modern era that, playing and then coaching the next year. That's kind of a trendy thing going on right now. And then California Chrome took out the competition in the Preakness. He's going to go to the Belmont with a chance to win the Triple Crown. We have not seen a Triple Crown winner since Affirm. California Chrome's looked good. I got to watch I didn't watch the Derby, but I got to watch him on Saturday. He is very impressive. So, see, Brandon Marshall signs an extension on The View. That's strange. I'm not even going to click on that. Why would Brandon Marshall sign his extension on The View? Yeah, so Tiger Woods still trying to come back from injury, has no timetable for when he will be back, but we'll continue to monitor. So again, we are wrapping up shop here on the Sports Blitz. I want to thank you for joining us on today's show. Maddie Lassiter always doing a really good job. We give him a hard time. Dave is Dave, and Mark Freeman should be back on Wednesday. He didn't tell me he would. I'm just going to go ahead and say he'll be back on Wednesday. But until then, thank you for joining us. If you didn't get to watch the whole show, go ahead and watch the replay. It will be posted. So I'm Weldon Braxton. You guys take care until Wednesday.